Okay. Injectors are in. Good and snug, no wiggle. And we're going to go ahead and pump up the fuel bubble a little bit just to make sure it's full of fuel, because I've been blowing fuel out of it. You don't want to over squeeze that, but let's see what happens. Sounds pretty good so far. No leaks. See anything untoward happening. So you can push down on that, you'll see a little fuel come out. Yep. That's also a good way to bleed any air out of the injectors. It's actually what it's for. It's not for pressurizing, it's for bleeding air out. Alrighty. So that's about all there is to that. And so the only way to tell is to run it around, burn some fuel out, and see how she acts. But fired right up pretty easy. And like I said, I mean, I'll leave it idling for a while, because it tends to, like I said, it tends to happen when it's sitting at low speed, and then you go to give it fuel. Rather, when you're running at high speed, you don't notice it. And that's the thing. I don't think they ever run at full speed, or she doesn't anyway. And when I say you got to run at full speed once in a while, I don't mean go out racing it, you know, like not burning it up full throttle all day long. I just mean, you know, give it a few minutes once in a while of full throttle, and that will help keep them running a little smoother. Just enough, not enough to burn up the engine, enough to clear out the injectors once in a while though. Just put a little extra pressure behind them. And they tend to not clog so much so quickly. But you know, you can't say it's from running it a certain way. It's just that time of year. Carburetor, float valve needles get stuck, and injectors get clogged. There's a lot of pollen in the air during the fall or spring. And it's just, you know, if you have a carbureted engine, you're probably going to have to clean out the carburetor or something every year, unless you have a water separator on board. But anyhow, there's where we're at. So far, so good. Sounds like the choke is automatic on this. It sounds like it just went off. So the engine's now up to, yeah, it's responding a little better. It seems to be, now that it's up to operating temperature. So I'm going to just give this a little test run around the cove here and see how she runs for a minute. Let's see, I don't know how much. No, there's plenty of fuel. I might go out in the open. So yeah, let's just Let's just do that now, as a matter of fact. And I'll just go ahead and stuff my tools in there. Bear with me for a minute. I'm going to set you down where you can't see anything but the seat. So I got the cast off here. Go ahead and go back around the front and untie from the cleat. Oh boy. Everything's harder to do one-handed with a phone in one hand. That's why these YouTube content creators, you know, you like to tell everybody, you like to think, they're fake, man. They got a whole camera crew following them. Yeah, they do. And that's so that you can see it too. But there's a lot of stuff you just can't do without your hands free. Alright, one more thing. I'm going to set you down one more time and put the hood back on. We don't want salt water. We don't want salt water getting all in the works, gunking everything up. So let's go ahead and. Oh, she jumps. She wants to go. Get out of here. I want to make sure that I don't hit any sea turtles or manatees or anything. And we got some markers up ahead. I got to stay out past those, or I run into shallow shoals. All right, here we go. And we're already on a plane. And that's full speed. So far, so good. She had asked me to come by and check on this after that hurricane. and it looks to be in the same position as far as I could tell. I see the water line, so it's not full of water, or I mean it may be full in the bilge, but it's not sinking or anything. It's had some, it's kind of got, the bilge pump is kind of jury rigged in there. It's not plumbed in just right, and the float switch is kind of, can't really trust it. So it has to be checked on until it gets straightened out right. But I figure I'd come out here and give it a good run around, because just to make sure it's not going to stall on them after I give it back to them. So I figure I'd go ahead and check on that boat at the same time, and kind of kill two birds with one stone. All right, so nice. Going from high speed to low speed, good transition. It just gets real quiet, don't stall. That's what we're looking for. Yo folks, when you see these slow speed, minimum wake signs, don't blast past them at full speed throwing a big 8-foot wave. Come on. It's not just about manatees, it's about the millions of dollars worth of boats over here that get slammed against these docks and on the piers and stuff. There's all kinds of reasons, man. Just especially if you see somebody in a small vessel like a kayak or something with no freeboard, you don't swamp them just because you can. It's not funny. So there's a boat coming. It's full speed, I guess, like 30 knots all the way to the bridge from here. So there's plenty of room to play. But see if he's gonna, yeah, he'd jump out of the pocket pretty quick there. And he's on a plane. thing I like about these Mercuries is they tend to have, where rather than rely on high frequency, high RPMs, they have a little bit lower RPM and a higher thrust. They'll have a little bit more of a pitch to the prop, and which means you can actually pull more weight. But another thing it does is it reduces the frequency of the sound vibrations in the water. It makes it a lower frequency, and manatee can hear them coming for miles and get out of the way. Whereas if you have a real high frequency prop, it might be loud, but they might not hear it because it just doesn't propagate through the water as easy as a low frequency wave. So, and I was going to mention that in another video, is when you're out here, I mean, even if you're not in a manatee zone, even if you're not in the shallows or anywhere near, you know, you see manatee have a round tail, and it's sometimes as big as the bow of this boat, and it'll make a swirl that's like half circle in a rounded shape. And so far I've never seen any other creature out here make a swirl of the same shape. So once you get out here and you start getting used to like seeing manatee, you see the swirl, the shape of the swirl in their tail. A lot of times that's all you'll see. Like you'll glance over and the tail is already gone under, and they're just, or the tail never even came above water enough for you to really see it sometimes. But yeah, often if they're close enough to the water, to the top of the water for you to hit them with your prop, then they're generally going to be close enough to leave a swirl with their tail as they swim, which does two things. It tells you where they are, but look at the shape of the swirl and you can see which way it's pointed, and you can tell which direction they're going generally. And go around those guys. You see those half round swirls? Go around, slow down and go around. Because man, they deserve to live too. And I see a lot of them with propeller scars on them. And I know there's a lot of fishermen out here and talk about they hate them. They complain that they have to slow down every time they get a manatee zone. Well, you know, the no wake zones, it says manatee zone and stuff like that. That's generally, most of them have nothing to do with manatee, except during certain seasons when they're running. Like, most of that no wake zone is to prevent property damage, and because your waves build up with other boats' waves and they slam stuff around. Like if you're near a bridge or a marina, a lot of maybe mooring fields, I mean, most anchorages are left to where you can rock them. City doesn't really care if you rock the people on anchor because they're not paying for it to be there. But even then, you know, like I slow down when I'm too close to those guys too, just because, man, nobody wants to have their coffee dumped off the table when they're having their morning wake up, you know. I just got to check this boat out because my very first boat was the same make and model as this one. It had the same mast and everything. And this is the boat. A lot of people talk trash about this brand of boat, but it's actually a really decent, for its price range, for the bottom of the barrel price range, they actually do pretty good. They handle some pretty rough weather. They're really stable. They got a real wide beam. There's a fairly big V berth. It's like queen size in the bow, and the mast is actually really solid. It's a high-end mast. Okay, let me tell you the background story behind this. The company that makes this boat only makes power boats, and they were going out of business. And the guy that used to be a designer for Chris Craft came over to Bayliner. Yes, this is made by Bayliner. And he designed this boat. And I believe this is the 256. It's the Buccaneer 256, I believe. Or the 246, one of those. It's 24.5 feet long. Or it might be the 26-foot long one. They got a few. They got a 30 and a 32 footer. And almost shaped like an old Morgan, but not where near as solid. They're good boats, man. You know, for somebody that doesn't have a lot of money and wants to get into sailing, they're not fast. This thing sails like a big bleach bottle. It's not fast. It's made to be small, but yet relatively spacious inside. Be able to carry you and maybe a wife and a kid. It can be set up with 2 bunks. There's a little, like a kid, there's room for a quarter berth for a kid to sleep in the back. And I mean, a grown adult probably not going to feel very comfortable in the quarter berth, but there is a quarter berth. Most people just use it for storage. There's a lot of more space in that than a lot of other sailboats because it has an outboard motor. That frees up a lot of space where the inboard and transmission would be and all that. And that has its advantages and disadvantages. With a sailboat your motor can bob up out of the water when your nose dips down, and then when you hit a wave going upward, your motor can drop down into the water. So it's like either too tall or either too high or too low. So you really need to have it on the high setting and have an extra long drive shaft where a lower unit is. I had my old Johnson on mine had an extension extension added to the lower unit. But you really need a sail drive on that to not be dunking your motor in the water or hearing it rev up coming out of the water, and you know, not pulling water into the water pump every time it hits a wave. It burns up, wears out the water pump impeller, and you know, God forbid you dunk the whole motor under salt water, then you got problems. So, but you really shouldn't be out in the open in that rough of water. If it's doing that, you need to turn around and head back in anyway. I mean, I've been out for several days out in open water with that vessel, not that particular one, but that make and model. And I've been through some rough storms in one of those. Many hurricanes. I lived on it for years, and I got rid of it and went to land for a while. Years down the road, I still went and got another one and lived on it for years. Traveled around Florida in it, all the way from Tampa to Sarasota, Bradenton, Fort Myers, across the lake over to the East Coast, out Stewart, down to Miami. Did all around Biscayne Bay and the Northern Keys. And like I said, it's not the greatest boat in the world, and it's definitely not top of the line, but it's a cool little boat. It's a great little starter boat for somebody that's not real experienced. Because one of the great things about that boat that I love the most is the weather helm. And in case you don't know what that means, when you start getting too much wind in the sails, some boats will capsize. Whereas this boat, the way it's shaped, when you start getting too much wind, it'll heel over. When it gets to where the rails are hitting the water, the weather itself, the wind itself, will turn the boat toward the wind, and it'll round right up, and 9 times out of 10 you don't have to adjust anything. It'll just round up to the wind until it lets some wind out of the sails, and then it'll come back on course. all on its own. It's got its own little weather helm. But of course, you know, if it's doing that a lot, you want to reef your sails, and because all it takes is one good strong gust, and that effect can be thrown off in a heartbeat. But yeah, I've sailed her what you call jamming the rail all the way to the water, where you can sit up on the cockpit seats, and you can lay your head back out of the railing, out of the lifeline, and dunk the back of your hair in the water while you're sailing. Now, that boat sits pretty high up off the water, so you got to be heeled over pretty hard to dunk your hair in the water. And I've done it a couple times. It can be done. So, but that's an old boat. Don't go grab an old boat and just take it out and go jamming like that full speed. You're gonna break something and end up demasted and real problems. You know, you want to know what your boat can do. You want to take it through some regular days of regular sailing and fine-tuning it until you get it all dialed in just right, and you get real familiar with the feel of your boat. So here we are, back at my trimaran, the hammerhead here, and she seemed to run right the whole way so far. So I've gone across the river and back twice now, and we'll see how she holds up. You know, signing off until next time.